Wage differentials are when different people earn different wages for having different skills or working in different industries or other factors as well.
Mm.
Wage differences can exist due to a number of reasons in the labor market. A bit of a sentence, but it's just talking about it's just introducing what I'm going to talk about after. Okay. So the number of reasons is what I'm going to talk about. And I'll just define a labor market so I have a bit more knowledge. And the labor market is a place where workers meet to exchange labor for wage.
Mm.
So while planning, we just thought of the different reasons why wage differentials can occur, and they can occur in different industries like footballers versus teachers, or because of gender or ethnicity and different reasons, or also location like London and outside of London. Um, so factoring that all in, when we're picking an industry, football was a really good industry to pick. So let's do that. And then within that, we're going to talk about demand, supply, MRP. Okay. So, um, one example of an industry with many large differences in wages is football. Um, so we can do like one paragraph on many different reasons. That we can do gender. We can do another
Mm.
paragraph on different members of staff. We could have done the same with banking as well. We could have done like CEOs versus graduates in banking, or we could have done male versus female in banking. So it would have worked well in that as well. But I didn't think to look inside the industry, and there's still so many reasons. And we could
Mm.
do like what, like low league versus um international players. But then that also gets under different members of staff. So let's focus on them too. Okay.
Mm.
So let's just get straight to the point then. So female footballers may earn lower amounts than male footballers.
As there's a lower demand.
Mhm. Uh, so obviously think about how we have to make a whole paragraph out of it. So don't so let's build up to it. So and also there's not just one reason. So but that is one of the reasons. So let's say it more like that. So one of the reasons for this is differences in demand.
The, and then you could talk about how the demand affects
Or
how much money they bring in.
even before we do that, whenever we say a word which may require a definition, let's define it because that's how you
Mm.
strengthen your answer. If you just keep jumping onto the next point, then it's not that your answer won't be good, it's that you'll run out of things to talk about. So let's actually
Mm.
show off our knowledge every time. Okay.
Yeah. So demand for labor is the number of workers that a firm are willing and able to hire at a given wage.
Not a firms, but other workers. Well done.
Um,
And then what was your next point?
Then you can talk about how as women's footballer has less demand, it gets less sponsorship and viewership, meaning it brings in less
You're missing one.
revenue flow.
Yeah, you're missing one important link as well. But then the point you said after would have been perfect for me. But one more step beforehand is what are the factors of demand that mean that demand is lower in the first place?
Um,
So the factors that shift the demand curve for labor are price of the good. No, wait, sorry, the demand for the good, productivity, and capital prices.
mm,
So the price of capital is irrelevant here because you're not going to replace a female or a male footballer with a machine. So that doesn't matter. Okay. But demand for the good and productivity is a big difference. Okay. So we need to explain that. We can't just jump to the next point yet because the question is purely asking us for reasons why they exist. So we really need to focus on why they exist in a lot of detail. Okay.
mm,
So between male and female football, demand for the good varies a lot. It's not actually a good, but because that's the factor which we learn in the textbook, we have to go on from that. So, for example, labor is a derived demand, and the end product or the good, the demand for footballers is derived from the demand of football tickets, TV rights, um, and a winning team. So all these kind of different things.
mm,
Demand for these things, the demand to work male and football matches over history has generally been higher than that for female football. And the productivity can be measured in terms of how much revenue each footballer generates
mm,
with shirt sales and tickets sold. This is also generally higher in men's football. So the demand for men's football will be significantly higher. And as we can see from the diagram below, this leads to a higher wage one and W2.
mm.
I'll just change to W1 compared to W0 on the diagram below. I'm just going to crop that actually. I don't need both of these. Bruh. Okay, I'll just crop it after. Bye.
No.
You were saying something earlier that I interrupted again, but you were saying something really important, but it was just too far ahead in the chain of reasoning. What were you saying?
That what's it called? That the men having a higher salary is based on them bringing a higher revenue.
Oh, okay, perfect. So that's what we just got to. We arrived to here, but we just explained why in terms of the factors
Mm,
on. So MRP, so basically productivity and demand for the final good. Okay, cool. So that's a nice paragraph. We talked about gender, and we can also talk about different members of staff as well. The demand, let me evaluate this actually. Okay. So in evaluation, the reason may not always be, the reason for the differences in wage. This is a really cool point, actually. The
mm,
difference in wage may not always be because of differences in productivity, but it could be because of differences in perceived productivity. This may not necessarily be the case in every industry, but um, employers, so this won't always be the case,
mm.
but sometimes employers may guess that um, one group of people, e.g., women in this case, because is what we're talking about, may have lower skills and have a lower productivity,
Mm.
and therefore they would have less demand for them, even though they didn't actually test if this is good. So this would happen like, especially of many years ago, or even recently in like the corporate world. So it's not like you would give a man and a woman equal chance and equal work experience and equal opportunity to show who's better. It could even be that it's just that somebody in power may just assume that the man has more productivity. It might even be the opposite. So a woman could even be more productive than the man. Okay. But they are not hired on the basis of productivity, but it's the perceived productivity, not the actual productivity. Does that make sense?
What so it's like what they view their productivity as,
What
not
they
what it
get.
actually is.
Yeah, exactly. So, like for example, let's say in 5 years' time, women become better at football than men, or in 10 years' time, or 20 years' time, or whenever that is, because until now we've seen that male football has completely dominated. We're just going to always
Mm.
naturally assume that male football is better. It could be the case that male football is better, then that's fair enough. But a lot of the time, we're just going to assume male football is better. So, um, in the corporate world, we've now seen that it makes no difference if you're a man or a woman, isn't it? Or if you're a doctor or
Yeah,
a nurse. So why should there be any um, wage differences between men and women in that case, right?
we yeah, but I feel like with a sport it's a bit different because there's
Yeah,
like
no,
biology.
100%, 100%. So that's why, because we picked football, we word it a little bit different, but it's based on what we picked. But the evaluation is still a very good evaluation, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. That's what I meant. Perfect. Um, good. So we've made a point, we've evaluated. Now we can make our second point and evaluate that. Differences in wages may also be due to supply or due to elasticity. So MRP was the main reason and demand, but now we're going to talk about supply and elasticity. So if we compare football players to football and medical staff, there would be large differences in wages, despite both groups being quite important. Overall, the demand for, no, we already talked about demand. The supply footballers is very low and very inelastic, whereas the supply for medical staff would be higher and relatively elastic. Okay. Or like normal. It wouldn't be either inelastic or elastic. If this was the case, so if this was the case, like you see on the right, the demand is fine, but assume the demand is the same. Even then, when you've got a low and inelastic supply, it just makes the wage way higher compared to if you got a normal supply curve. Okay.
Yeah.
The players would earn a much higher wage, W2, compared to medical staff, W1. Now, when you're doing a chain of reasoning, you always want to over explain everything and explain it in a way where a 12-year-old would not ask too many questions. What have we not explained yet? Or like what can we go into more detail in this chain of reasoning about?
What elasticity is?
Yes, and also a bit more
Um,
why it's low and inelastic.
oh,
Cool. So I'll go under the diagram now. So elasticity of the supply of labor is the quantity percentage change in supply of labor given an initial change in wage rate. So why would the supply of footballers be inelastic? Because normally, if wage increases or if wage decreases, more or less people would want to work. Why would that not really change much with footballers?
um,
We're going to use a mixture of common sense and also our knowledge. So on here, we've got the supply, elasticity of supply is determined by the nature of the skills required, vocational elements, and that's exactly what you said. We can just focus on them too. Yeah. So supply for footballers is inelastic, and this means that when wage goes up or down, the number of people willing and able to be a footballer doesn't change too much. Yeah. So we've got so we said if wages were lower, the vocational element, what does that actually mean? Is it like how much you enjoy something?
vocational. I swear vocational means you don't do it for like,
You do it because for the passion, right?
yeah.
Or like for you because you care about that thing. Yeah. And if wages were higher, more people would want to work, but not many more people, would be willing and able to work as a footballer due to the high level of skills required. Okay.
Mm.
Can we evaluate that?
Could you say that if the wages are set higher, people would like have a higher want to get good enough to get to that wage level
For footballers or for the medical staff?
for footballers?
Yeah. But then that just makes the wage differences higher anyway, so it's not really.
Mm,
Or are you saying that it would be like more elastic? Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
mm. Um,
Let's focus more on the medical staff and think about how we could argue against our points. Because the football thing is kind of fixed as it is. But could we not argue that medical staff is also vocational
yeah.
and also unique skills? But then the only problem is that the skills are not as unique. Like it's easier to get a medical degree than to become a professional footballer, right? Or there's more people who are like capable of doing that.
Mm,
But we can still say that. So the vocational element of being a medical staff, especially in football, is also going to be high. And it also requires many years of training. So therefore, the wage differential may not need to be as high. That's one thing. But we can just argue, we can evaluate our evaluation by saying, however, it is the extent to which footballers have been training since they were a kid compared to the years, which is much greater compared to the years training to training in medicine or science. Okay,
mm,
cool. Um, so we can also talk about demand being inelastic as well if you wanted extra points.
mm,
Demand for football is inelastic because demand for football tickets is inelastic because die-hard fans will go to a match even if prices change. So stadiums will always be filled out, and the footballers who play for the teams where the stadium is always full will have an inelastic wage as well, inelastic demand as well. But yeah, in conclusion, there are many different reasons for wage differences in the football industry. Some of these may be considered as fair due to the nature of product, nature of marginal revenue product theory and how demand varies based on productivity. Some of the wage differences may also stem from discrimination and incorrect perceptions of labor. Wage discrimination should be resolved using tight regulation. So, like asking for data on who's being hired. Like, for example, with medical staff, there should be like an equal number of male and female staff and stuff like that, or the ones that are hired should have the same wages, that kind of thing. Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, and lastly, some of the wage differential can be narrowed through education training as well as trade union membership, which encourages groups of workers to demand to be motivated to upskill, but then also to demand higher wages and better working conditions for their output.